All right, hello everyone, and welcome to this week's podcast. If you guys are wanting to actually see what this looks like before it gets released on the shorts, which will be a while for this particular one because I usually keep them in order and all of that. So I'm working on content from like several months ago that goes on to shorts. If you're wanting to see that, this is a good time to plug locals.com for my supporters. So my supporters get the video in full quality or as best quality as I can put on the locals with the tier that I have. So let's just jump, I guess, right into today's episode. I don't think I have any updates that I really need to update on. So today's quote is, "Please be patient with me. Sometimes when I'm quiet, it's because I need to figure myself out. It's not because I don't want to talk. Sometimes there are no words for my thoughts." This is by Kamla Bolaños, I believe is how you say that. This quote not only speaks to the introvert in me, which I think it mainly applies to that, but it also kind of talks about those thoughts that, like, when people ask you specific questions kind of on the spot about how it can be overwhelming to tell them what's happening in that moment. So, yeah, I'm just gonna adjust this for a second. Kind of a weird angle here. Okay, let me try that. I've talked a lot about how I'm introverted and how this affects not only who I share this with, but it also affects how much I share. I'm a lot more open on my platforms because I give myself the proper environment to gather my thoughts, and this allows me to feel like I'm not put on the spot. One of the things that you would notice about me if you were to meet me in person and ask me about migraines, especially if you're not someone I know well, you can get very quick, short answers that are very different than what you hear on my actual platforms. There's a reason for this, and that is that it's hard explaining this really quickly, I guess, to people. I'm not able to have the proper time to gather exactly what I want to say in the moment. I've talked a lot about how introverted I am and how it can take me extra second to process exactly how I want to word something. And I feel like when you're put on the spot, you always leave things out, or you always leave so that you're just not sharing and you're missing important details that some people might be using to make quick judgments about how you're doing. I find myself a lot more quiet these days, and I also find myself to be a lot more selective about how much I share my migraines when in person with others who are closest to me. You'd think that having this platform and making videos be something I do on the side that I feel extremely comfortable sharing and wanting to share, but I feel like it actually does the opposite. So because I have a place to kind of get out my frustrations, how I'm feeling, I have a place that's basically a safe space because of how much and when I release and what I release. When I'm in person, I can kind of hold that back a little bit because it's not the same environment as when I'm in this particular environment here. Again, you'd think having this platform that I'd be a lot more confident talking about this kind of thing. And I mean, I am to a certain point. But unless I feel like I'm given the proper environment where I can be as specific as I need to be, and I know that people are actually kind of wanting to know what's going on, like they're not in a rush, basically. We're not in the environment where things need to be kept to a really short soundbite, then I feel comfortable sharing exactly what's going on because I feel like this is overwhelming for me, which I'm going to get into that topic in a bit, but it's hopefully going to be presented in a way that it's not overwhelming to that other person and they're not going to be completely overwhelmed with the information that I'm telling them as well. I have gotten a lot better actually communicating just in general by having this platform, but also because I share a lot, I don't have a lot on my actual mind with my migraines anymore. Like, I kind of save what I want to vent about for my platforms, and then who's ever interested, whether that be in my family or my friends or those closest to me, they can tune in on their own time when they feel like they can digest whatever I'm telling them. So I don't feel that same need to share. Like, it's not that I'm not sharing because it's not happening. It's, I have this place now that I can share so I don't feel the need to talk about it any other time. And I actually honestly really don't feel like talking a lot about it when I'm not in that particular situation. I found that I've needed a lot of time to process what I was being told when I was dealing with not only diagnosis, but when things wouldn't go in the direction that I would want them to. I'm not sure if this is because my brain wants to analyze everything and it's extremely overwhelming with just how quickly life changes in these moments, but sometimes even I needed a minute to grasp the situation. As you guys may or may not know, I have a biochemistry degree. It's a thing that I understand and can process information pretty fast. You have to be able to do that when you're thrown the information you're given. When I was in my particular program, things come at you at feels like 200 miles an hour at points. Even I needed a minute to process what I was being told. I cannot imagine having zero medical background actually and being told everything that can happen in a 15-minute appointment with a neurologist. I don't know if they knew that I had this background so they were a little bit more comfortable with being a little bit faster with how they tell me information, and they were able to tell that I was doing okay with how quickly they were presenting it. But it really felt like if I hadn't had that background, I would have been even more overwhelmed, because I was honestly quite overwhelmed. I would come out of some of those appointments just like I had just been in a class where I was struggling. I know I didn't pick up everything that I needed to from that. How do you remember everything from that? It was a lot at once, and then with the whole diagnosis process too, that was a lot at once. It's gotten better as I've kind of learned about these conditions by not only having my own channel where I share and need to kind of understand the basics about it, but as I've tried to learn also kind of everything that can go on with these types of chronic illnesses. And even still, it can be quite overwhelming. It hasn't been overwhelming in a while just because things have gone from so bad to pretty much as normal as they're going to get for me. Any information that my brain has had to process has been oh my goodness, this was just a dream a few months ago. And it's felt like that up until just my latest appointment where I no longer have to see my ophthalmologist. I did talk about that in the last podcast, so make sure you guys can check out that last one. Along with this, with the journey with meditation, I find myself saying this has no words a lot. People might think this is because of trying to get out of explaining a situation, but seriously, sometimes there are no words for a situation. Explaining what you're going through to someone who's never experienced anything close to it is extremely difficult to do, as our experiences with pain and illness are extremely subjective. When you are trying to explain to someone what is IIH, let's just pause on that. What is IIH? What do I experience that you'll be able to relate to? If that person has never had a severe headache in their life, you're going to have a very difficult time telling them exactly what that feels like. Explaining what you're going through with all of these symptoms. So when you put something into words, your brain is trying to process, okay, how can I explain this in the proper way? While their brain is going to be like, how can I relate to this? What one person is experiencing in that moment, and they're trying to communicate it to another, because it's so experiential and because it's so subjective, it's very difficult to explain and to have an understanding if that other person is truly understanding what you're going through. They're relating, this was the worst pain of my life, to whatever their worst pain of their life has ever been. And because you may or may not have been through the same thing, it can be very difficult to explain to that person, what is this exactly like to experience? What are you truly experiencing? It's like explaining the color blue to someone who has never seen it before. Because it's so subjective and because you haven't been through it, you can't really put words to it. When I say, I really don't know how to explain how I'm feeling right now into words, people think that I'm backing out of the situation and trying to get out of that situation. But the truth is, I'm not. I'm just having trouble explaining not only into words what I'm experiencing, but because my experience is so subjective, it's just not possible to have that other person who doesn't have that same condition relate. And I think this is why having people in your life who have the same conditions as you is extremely helpful, and to have people in your life that are experiencing the same things as you is extremely helpful, because for those moments you can't put into words, you can tell your symptoms to someone who does go through the same experience and really understand each other on a deeper level despite not being able to put it into words in that moment. It's hard for me to communicate what that is, but like for those of you who are on a meditation journey or all of that, trying to explain to someone what you experienced during a meditation and like why you want to go on retreats and all of that is extremely difficult to do to someone who has never meditated a single minute in their life. Our tolerances to how well we manage stressful and frustrating situations in life are also extremely subjective. Some people will completely fall apart, and others will find a way to bounce over every hurdle that comes their way. When I'm having a rough time, I naturally want to be alone because these stressful situations are extremely overstimulating. Because of that overstimulation, I need time to calm my thoughts down. People are not only subjective in what they've experienced in their life to understand the symptoms and the exact symptoms that you're going through, but people are also extremely subjective in the way they handle stressful and frustrating situations, both of which apply to chronic illness in many different situations. So it's a stressful time, it's a frustrating time. Things feel like they're completely falling apart, honestly, if you go by the way your mind interprets it, especially if you have things that are being taken away from you in the moment, or they feel like they're being taken away from you in the moment. Some people will react to this by completely falling apart, and others will find a way to bring it as part of their life and only make them stronger. I feel like I had both happen to me before diagnosis and into diagnosis. I was in a very rough time mentally. It was really, really, really rough. It really was. It wasn't until I pretty much got frustrated with being frustrated that things started to turn around a little bit. I just basically got frustrated with the constant feeling of falling apart, and I wanted some of my life back. This is partly why when I was told that this could go away with weight loss, that I wanted to give it the ultimate shot. I also knew that I gained weight during my time in school, and I wanted to get back down to the weight I was before, because I had lost weight a few years before that. I didn't know that the migraines were going to become a part of it, and unfortunately migraines are a lot harder than IIH. At least for me they are. Like the IIH is essentially gone, but I feel like the migraines are a bit of a side effect from that. I really honestly feel that my migraines developed because of having IIH and the way the pain, it gets amplified, and that whole process with CGRP, but I have no way of proving this. Like, it could have happened either way, but I really do think it was a facilitator to that. When I'm having a rough time, I naturally kind of want to be alone because it's just too much for me in that moment, and stressful situations and frustrating situations, not only do I get quite emotional, so that makes me feel like I want to isolate myself, but it's just too much stimulation. I mean, in the way that the introvert gets overstimulated. It's like a thought storm on steroids, basically. It's basically that's how I manage those stressful situations, is by coming in to myself and then figuring out a way to manage the situation. As I said, some people, in the way that they react, will completely fall apart, and others will find a way to bounce above every single hurdle that comes their way. I think most of us are probably going to be somewhere in the center with this. But as far as like bouncing over hurdles, I think you eventually have to find a way to kind of overcome these obstacles, or your illness will just completely take over everything in your life and you will be essentially stuck in one position. Like, I don't really know how else to word that. I know that's probably a bit of strong wording, but I just feel like if I didn't push myself, I wouldn't be in the situation that I am now, where I am to the point where I am thriving a bit more. Because I'm so in the moment now, it can be very hard to answer the question, how are you feeling today, in a quick way. It also changes very quickly too. I don't know about anyone else, but IIH flares and migraine attacks can hit so quickly. I haven't had an IIH flare in several years. I have to put that out there right now. My IIH is in remission, and it's essentially gone at this point. That being said, migraine attacks and the type of migraines that I often get now, they hit very quickly. It's very similar to when my IIH would flare up, they feel so similar. Like, I've actually had what are called a lot of vestibular migraines in recent weeks. I actually didn't really know this had a name until I kind of looked up the dizziness. Now, I know dizziness can happen with migraines as it is, but it's almost like exclusively dizziness now. That being said, these hit so fast that they're very similar to when I had IIH. So 1 second I feel fine, and the next I'm in tears due to pain or symptoms. Like, it's quick. It's very quick. It's like as quick as an aura can occur, basically. So it's really, really fast. If I hesitate, it's not because I'm not sure about how I'm feeling. It's because I may not be able to know how to express how I'm feeling in that exact moment. The other day, so this past Saturday, I had a vestibular migraine hit me. So I'm filming this on the 23rd of August, and I was actually at work, and all of a sudden, out of nowhere, I just felt dizzy. So I had been up on the ladder a bit, and I'm just like, I don't feel good. I don't feel right. I feel like I'm dizzy. It really, like, I notice it first if I'm on the ladder usually. I'm really, really short. So basically, second shelf and above in a grocery store, and I need a ladder to reach the stuff in the back. I was getting emotional actually in the moment because I'm just like, oh, my head, why are you doing this to me? Like, I know that I'm on my period, but like, why must we have a migraine? But anyways, it's kind of the thoughts that go through and then it's gone. If I hesitate in how I'm feeling, or if I say that I'm fine when I'm truly not, it's because I may not know how to express how I'm feeling in that exact moment. It's really hard to put words to this. I would say the closest thing I can come up to is if it's like you're on a small rocky boat. Like when you first get onto the water in a small boat, and that kind of feeling of weightlessness is very, very close to how I feel during one of these migraines. If I hesitate to respond, it's because I'm trying to gather my thoughts, and I'm trying to gather exactly what I want to say in that moment. It's not like I am ignoring you. It's often because I'm processing my thoughts in those moments. Please be patient. It's really hard to explain what having these conditions is like to people who don't have them. And it's not because I'm trying to ignore the situation. Sometimes I can be. This past weekend, I kind of was just trying to make it to the end of the day and just live in the moment so that it didn't feel like I was suffering, because it was really bad. It was really, really hard for me to finish off that particular day the other day. Like I said, sometimes there just aren't words for what I might be experiencing in the moment. It's not that I don't really want to share, it's the fact that I'm trying to put words to a situation that is very hard to talk about. Like, I can talk about the symptoms until I'm essentially blue in the face, but if people have never experienced how I've experienced this, or they've never truly experienced some of these symptoms, they're not going to be able to even try to put themselves into my shoes. And this is why I feel that same thing that I've always felt about the situation. You don't necessarily have to relate to exactly everything that I'm trying to say, but if you can kind of just put compassion to that. And what's the best way how I would tell you to respond to this situation is know that I'm trying to communicate how I'm feeling, but at some point, even this becomes beyond words, essentially. With that being said, I think that's everything that I kind of want to talk about in this one. I don't think I have anything else I really need to talk about in this particular episode. So if you're wanting to, you can follow me across social media. I'm on all the platforms. I'm not sharing much on Twitter or Threads these days. It's kind of just quick thoughts whenever I have something I want to share. On Threads, it's a little bit more personal though. I don't know, I just feel like I can open up on that platform in a weird way. You can find the short videos on Instagram, Facebook, and YouTube. If you're wanting to find a way that you can support me, you can do so on locals.com. So it's ashley.stewart.locals.com. I was talking about it a little bit at the start of the podcast. On YouTube, please don't forget to like and subscribe and all of that wonderful thing. We're also available on podcast form with that, which is what I share these on. If you're listening to this on a podcasting platform, please subscribe and leave a review, as it does help to get our podcast more out there. I think that's it for this one. So thanks for joining me, and I hope to see you guys in the next one. Bye, everyone.